Hi everybody, Danielle, and Stephanie Boy here. We have a really special guest on today, and we are just so grateful to hear what Cece has to say. She is a porn actress who started at 21 years old and was on film for 18 months, which is actually a very long time. And she's been out of the industry for 4 years now, and she is here to debunk a lot of myths. And the first myth we're going to talk about is for the girls who are considering getting into porn.
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me a platform on which I can reach young men and women. So yes. I hope it helps.
Cece, do you mind giving us a little bit of background on your story and how you got into pornography?
Actually, I was a college student, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia, in the fall of 2012. I was actually there for academic reasons. Like, I had received an award at an academic function up in Atlanta, so I was there for that. And so what's interesting is I used to call him my boyfriend, and my first boyfriend, in fact. And I now refer to him as my trafficker because in retrospect, that was the reality of the situation. But I met my trafficker in Atlanta at that function, 2012.
Just, can I repeat that? At an academic awards event.
Yeah, I was actually a good student at the time.
I believe you. That's an incredible place for someone to go traffic.
But I want to make it very clear what Cece is saying, because it is not at all uncommon that traffickers will prey on girls this way, and they will make them their girlfriend, and it's like an indoctrination into the sex trade industry. I actually believe that the statistic is 30% at minimum of amateur pornography on Pornhub, all websites, is trafficked girls. And I think that that's a low number, and you can probably speak to that, but go ahead.
On that note, I didn't realize that in forming an intimate relationship with this man, that he was grooming me to be trafficked into sex work.
So people often think that this is, the girl with no options, the girl who's, down and out, damaged, runaway. That is such a myth. You're intelligent, smart, in college, getting an award. You have a boyfriend that you're really into, right? This is how this started.
Right. Yeah. It was just like because he was my first boyfriend. Yeah, I just didn't really have a reference to what a relationship was supposed to be like.
What you said. I just think that sometimes people hear that and they go, oh, she was a girl who was trafficked. Well, it's not really like you got trafficked from your neighborhood. Or like, you were crossing a border illegally. It's like you were trafficked because it was your boyfriend and he groomed you into that industry.
Right.
Can you describe what that looks like? In other words, so there's like a level of trust built, friendship, you're, hooking up, you're into him, and then what? One thing leads to the next, which looks like what? Because it's probably common for a lot of people.
Right. Because obviously it depends on the girl and her background. Obviously, traffickers assess like a girl's personality type, a psychology, maybe any vulnerabilities they could prey upon. So it's a case-by-case situation. Right. But so you have to take into consideration that traffickers are grown men, and in some cases women. And he was obviously, because my trafficker was 34 when I met him, and I was 20. So you have to take that into account. And so traffickers, essentially, it's a case-by-case situation with girls they want to recruit, because they have to assess the girl's psychology and maybe her emotional vulnerabilities or what have you. And in my case, I was already struggling with substance abuse in college. And he our relationship initially developed as he was my dealer. So that's where our relationship formed, was he was a supplier for me. It started out as a long distance sort of talking, and he would send me drugs to school, like for free.
Wow.
Yeah. Like he would send me stuff for free just because I, to be nice, or like what I thought was like courting me, even though that sounds crazy. Yeah.
Right.
So it started out as like a long distance relationship. Like we were just talking, and it was obvious that we hit it off.
Right.
That there was a spark. And so this is what's interesting is they, like, again, it depends on the girl, but especially when I met my trafficker, I was a virgin. I didn't have any sexual and or like intimate relationship experience. And so I'm sure in retrospect, like I realized he knew he couldn't just throw me in the fire.
Right.
And so I realized in retrospect how sort of, calculated his approach was, in that he tried to slowly desensitize me to sex work, and that the first thing he ever brought up to me was webcamming, because he knew I was financially struggling in school, like a lot. So he brought up webcamming because I had told him I was a virgin. So, and he brought up like the idea of stripping, because he was like, oh, well, you're never having sex in these cases. Like you never have to have sex. You're just playing with yourself. Like you'll make a lot of money. You just have to dance, or you just have to do this. And he even brought up like the sugar daddy thing to me, where he's like, oh, I have men that you just have to go on a date with them and just keep them company. And he's like, you don't have to have sex with them. It's not like that. You're just essentially getting paid to be arm candy. Like you're just going to spend time with these men.
Do you know, this is why I have so much passion for the girls, because how many girls don't have a strong support system, or don't want to burden their family more with finances and things like that if they come from, a family that struggles or whatever. And how many is this seems so innocuous, you're masturbating on screen, you're doing something so simple. Cece, we talked before, and not to rush your story along, but that is it's a slow boil, but it's also very directed, and it's a quick fall into pornography.
Kind of once you hop on that train, it just goes 100 miles an hour, and you feel like you can't stop, or like you can't get off.
Yeah.
And you
have no power.
What's that?
Like they've established themselves as the person with the power and the ideas, and you rely on that.
Right.
Because at first they seem like good ideas. So
it seems relatively harmless. I don't know what our audience members might know or not know about trafficking, but
please inform them.
Like, so what's interesting is just this last summer, I received a scholarship to attend a human trafficking academy at a law school.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a week-long kind of intensive program.
Yeah.
And so this all happened, I met him in 2012. So that was 6 years ago.
Right.
Just this last summer, so 4 months ago, I realized that I was a victim of human trafficking. For 6 years, I did not identify as such. Not that I didn't have any accountability for my choices at that time, but I had always kind of accepted full responsibility for what happened.
Right.
Blamed myself. So it wasn't until recently.
I think what girls, especially young girls, need to hear is that, and I talked about this with another former adult actress, that she didn't understand when you're 18, 21, I mean, for goodness sakes, when you're even under 25, 28 years of age, I mean, when you have somebody who's been in this industry, who knows how to say things, who knows how to position things that they seem really innocuous and easy, and they know what they're doing. I mean, they are it's like they're brainwashing you into this thing, and then you're naive. But all of the people who are doing this to you are
Right.
older than 30, more than likely. You know,
Yes.
they're wise to the ways of what it's going to take and what you have to do, and that this is just your indoctrination. And once they've got you, then they've got you for life. Because the life of a porn star, while yours might have been 18 months, in general is 3 months. 3
Correct.
months, and then she ends up on the streets of Nevada, or she has to do hardcore pornography that is completely and utterly degrading.
Really?
In the business, they call it a girl's shelf life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Typically lasts 3 months. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Cece, I'm really glad that you had the revelation that this wasn't you. I think that there's so many girls who never get to that place. They
Right.
carry on with the mental anguish that, you know, that they're fully responsible.
Right.
And believe me, the world would love to tell them that too, right? So that's what we're doing right now. Yeah, when you're 20 and you're a 20-year-old virgin and a 34-year-old man leading you down a path, giving you drugs for free, telling you this is going to be an easy way for you to make some money. It's totally innocent, you know, and one step leads to the other. I'm glad that you see that now, because Stephanie has talked directly to other girls who aren't there yet. They don't see that this was not them.
Right. Well, Danielle, that's such an interesting point that so often society condemns and
Yes.
ostracizes me for participating, but no one ever asks, well, what about the people who
Got her there.
Exactly. I'm so glad that you're there, because then you can emotionally heal and move forward knowing you were preyed upon.
And I hate to say it, unfortunately, a lot of people like their porn habit. They don't want to look. They don't want to know the truth.
Right. They don't want to feel guilty. They don't want to feel responsible. They don't want to like take any accountability for their actions.
Absolutely not. So go ahead. So what else did you learn?
Society has this misconception that human trafficking is this third world issue. They envision women in chains and tied to beds with needles in their arms. And like that movie Taken with Liam Neeson, people think that that's what trafficking is.
Yeah.
That it's this forceful life or death, you know, but under law, any form of force, fraud, or coercion is constitutes human trafficking. So
coercion is a big one.
Exactly. Yes. And because I also carried that misconception that like the Hollywood portrayal of human trafficking was the reality, I never considered myself to be a victim, because I was like, oh, well, I still technically agreed to it. Like, no one held a gun to my head. He didn't make me do it. But I was talking to officials at the academy, and they're like, oh, but did they ever manipulate you using like withholding of money or drugs or anything and I was like, oh yeah, he did actually. Did they ever? And they were like, oh, did he ever like tell you something was one thing and then when you got there it was something different? Did they ever threaten your family, your physical well-being? And I was like, yes, actually.
Yeah,
absolutely.